not
that
that
was
was
that's
Exactly.
so
that's the
I like it.
old before Microsoft took it over.
Yes, that's
So
right.
it's shipping
So,
cost.
we went through pretty much everything on the document items tab. Last couple things just wanted to mention, pretty straightforward, but your subtotal tax, the shipping option, and your grand total will be set here at the bottom. Also, your recurring options will be displayed here as well. So if you have monthly, quarterly, annual, weekly, those will be displayed down here so you can see the totals for those. This is also where you can change the deposit option. So if you set a specific requirement for your deposit amount and you need to change that, you can click this option here and you can make that adjustment. So the next tab is the sold to, ship to tab. So there's going to be a few different options here, specifically depending on which CRM you're using in QuoteWerks. But no matter which one you're using, the kind of workflow and the way we look for contacts, the way we pull contacts in, it's going to work exactly the same. So if you're using ConnectWise, AutoTask, Google Contacts, Outlook, Act, Goldmine, whatever you're using, we're going to look for contacts in the exact same way. The important thing on the sold to, ship to tab is to remember that the sold to is kind of like the default field in QuoteWerks. This is who we're going to create the opportunity for. This is who we're going to create the quote for in QuoteWerks. This is the default contact information that's going to be on the quote. So if you want to create the opportunity for a different contact, you're going to want to make sure that the sold to is who that contact is. So again, this is kind of like the default field. The ship to and bill to fields are additional fields, so if you need them, they're there and you can use them. If not, you can actually leave them blank, or you can use the same contact across all three fields. So they're just there if you need it. The ship to I would populate if you are planning on using any kind of purchasing in QuoteWerks, because this is the shipping address we're going to pull from. So that's just another important thing to note there. So when you want to pull a contact from QuoteWerks, you're going to have a couple options. If you're using Act or Goldmine, if you have that contact currently open in Act or Goldmine, this icon will be available here. And basically what it'll do is it'll retrieve the current open contact in QuoteWerks. I have mine set up right now with ConnectWise since we have more ConnectWise users in here than anything, so that option's not available, but if I was using Act, if I was using Goldmine, I'd be able to select the open contact. This will clear away your fields, so the little windshield wiper looking icon here, this is going to empty your fields for you. So if you started, if you populated the contact in here and you want to start fresh, you can click on this icon and that'll actually clear the fields from pulling that information in. This will let you copy over from a specific field. So you'll see there's a drop down here once I select the contact, where I can copy over from the ship to or the bill to, or I can copy over to the bill to or ship to. It's going to be up to you. You can also manually type in your contact information. So if you don't feel like pulling it from the contact, you can manually type that information in here. This is important to note that it will not be linked with your CRM or PSA if you do that. So if you decide that I'm just going to type in, ABC vendor in here, and I create my contact, I can quote this contact out, but it's not going to create an opportunity for this customer because it hasn't been linked with that contact in my CRM or PSA. So if you want to create an opportunity in your CRM or PSA, you do need to pull a contact from that application first.
Is there a way to link, say somebody, a new customer calls in, you haven't created a CRM, a record for them in Act because they're a lead, they're not a customer yet, and then later they become a customer. Is there a way to link those two after the fact so that you can manually say, I want to copy this over to an Act that I've created now?
Yes. Yeah, all you have to do at that point is just to go search for the contact and pull it in.
Oh, okay.
And then hit save. So that's all.
Hit save and it'll automatically stamp it.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's a really good question. So what he was asking, in case anyone couldn't hear him, was that if you manually put in your contacts information in here, send out the quote to the customer, and then you go into your CRM later and you put the contact information in there, they become a customer, so you have it all filled out, and you want to link this quote to that opportunity or to that customer, all you have to do is come back into the quote in QuoteWerks, click on the search for contact option, bring up the search window, and then you just find your contact, and then you pull the contact in QuoteWerks.
Which you will have to re-enter all the data with the contact manager. It manually again.
Right.
Okay.
So once you pull the contact information from your CRM, then this contact is linked to this quote in QuoteWerks, so we'll be able to create the opportunity, everything will flow into that contact manager. Like we said previously, once you pull the contact, your active quotes panel will open. So now you can actually see that it opens here. So it tells me I have 2 open quotes for this contact. And then I can see one was created on 1/28/2015, the other one in December. So if I right click, one of the options will be to open the document from here, the other will be to convert to lost. Now that I have opened the contact, I can also copy from the different fields. So you can see now if I click on the drop down, I can choose to copy from the ship to or the bill to just by clicking on the drop down. If you click on the card icon itself, it's going to copy from the sold to. So like how I said, if you can just always remember the sold to is kind of the default, you can always click on the default here and it'll always copy it over and update it with any changes. Make sure we covered everything here. If you're using ConnectWise or Salesforce, you can actually create the contact record from QuoteWerks. We're going to be looking to expand that to AutoTask and Act. Actually, it may already be in Act. But if you put the contact information in here, there'll be a gold button that will show up, and what that'll let you do is create that contact record in your CRM or PSA. Right now, I know it's in ConnectWise and Salesforce, but I think we're adding it to Act and to AutoTask as well.
Any idea on time frame for that?
I don't actually.
Okay.
I know it's on the development map for this year. Next tab is going to be your sale info tab. The sale info tab is document specific information. So this is where you're going to have your document date, shipping information, customer terms, customer PO number, the contract dates that we talked about earlier. So if you are using recurring items and you want them all to use the same dates, you can set your contract dates here. Anytime you see a date field in QuoteWerks, you can actually double click and it'll bring up a date window. So that goes for your expiration date field, a custom date field. Anytime you see a date, you can just double click and that'll bring up the date window, and you can set the date for whatever you need in those fields. This is also where you can set your alternate currency. So if you're quoting in Canadian dollars, but you need to convert it to US dollars, or you're quoting into euros or anything like that, you can change that alternate currency option here. The tax rate is set here as well. I have my default tax rate set as 8%, so that's why it's automatically populated as 8%. If you click on the ellipsis button here, you can actually create a pick list of different tax rates. So I would recommend, if you sell a lot of the same areas and they use the same tax rates over and over again, to go ahead and create a table of tax rates. So you can simply select which tax rate you want to use at that point. If you have the real-time module on QuoteWerks, you can actually look up the tax rate based on the zip code of the customer that you're selling to, and that's what this little icon will be. If you click on that, that'll actually look at in my case, my sold to contact, and it's looking at my zip code, and then it's going to tell me what my tax information is, and then I can select that tax rate and hit select, and then it'll update my tax rate. On the right hand side, you'll see we have the document number. So once you save your document number will be available here. Same thing with the project number. Then we have our sales rep and prepared by fields. The sales rep field is who has ownership of this document in QuoteWerks. By default, when you create a new document in QuoteWerks, the sales rep is going to be set as you. That's who you logged in as. Same thing for the prepared by. However, if you need to create a quote on someone's behalf, maybe they're out of the office, on vacation, whatever, you can change the sales rep by clicking on the drop down, and you can select a different rep to create the document for. This will allow you to have access to the document, so if you need to make changes, as long as you're set as a prepared by, you can make changes to it. But on the customer side of things, it'll look like it came from this sales rep, because it'll have all their contact information. And when the sales rep comes back into the office, they can actually search for any documents that were created while they were gone, and it'll be under their username. So the sales rep field who has ownership of the document. Prepared by just means you created it, and you can also have access to it so you can make changes to it. For our purposes, we're going to go ahead and just leave it as myself, just as simple. Doc status, this is what we talked about in that options menu, where you can actually set the default doc status. So you can see here mine set is open. You can change it manually by clicking on the ellipsis button here, and this will give you a list of all the statuses that you've created in QuoteWerks. So if you're doing any type of reporting, again, this is going to be important that you're using these statuses correctly, that you have your statuses set here.
Brandon, can you go back in and do any global changes to that doc status?
There might be something in the medic utility.
Say you haven't been doing it for 6 months and you're a
Right.
new rep and you want them to update all this so the dashboard's accurate and correct.
I'll have to check for you. There might be something in the medic utility where you could run where you can run that utility and it may update the statuses. It's a good question.
Give it 1,000 quotes, it's gonna take a while, right?
Yeah, let me write that down. Okay. The expiration date field, again, this is one of those default settings that we set in our options menu. So I have mine set for 30 days from the document date. So it's going to automatically calculate when I create a new blank document in QuoteWerks, it's going to automatically populate my date and my expiration date. So you can set that, you can use that default. If you want to change it, again, just double click since it's a date field and you can choose a different date. There's also some shortcuts. I think if you hit T while you're in here, it'll put it to today's date. There's a couple different options as well. I'm trying to remember. You can do you can use like the plus sign. So if you highlight it, you can use the plus symbol, and it'll do it by 1 day, or minus will do it minus 1 day. So there's a couple shortcuts you can use for that. Like I said, usually the easiest is just if you want to change that, double click. You can hit today as an option. You can also just go by month. So if I wanted to make it until April 20th, that would be an option as well. A lot of these fields in QuoteWerks have what we call the F2 lookups. So if you double click in a field, you'll have this F2 lookup screen. So if you ever want to create a pick list or like default list of items that you can, or default selection that you can choose from, you can double click in a field or click on the F2 lookup tab and it'll open up that window. So anytime you see a field in QuoteWorks, you can double click in it if you want to set like a pick list to choose from. Very useful on like terms, you know, if you offer 3 or 4 different types of terms. Instead of having to type it in each time, you can just double click and you can choose what the terms are going to be for that specific field. And then your locked checkbox here. If you lock a document in QuoteWorks, that document cannot be modified. It cannot be changed. You cannot convert it to an order. There's really nothing you can do to it. It's pretty much non-changeable unless you have master rights, and then you can come in here and uncheck it. The only way to unlock a document is if you have master rights or if you're the user who locked it. Other than that, someone else cannot unlock a document. So if you approve a document in QuoteWorks, if you're using our document approvals, we will lock the document once it's been approved, and the only one who has access to change it is going to be the person who locked it, so the approver, or someone with master rights. Now, on the right-hand side, you're going to see we have payment options. These are new in 5.0. So if you remember, there was a payment options tab that we talked about. So this is where that's pulling that information from. These are the defaults that we're using. So we're saying we're giving the customer the option to pay by credit card or terms. And just like in the default, you can choose to add or remove one. So I didn't have terms on there, and I wanted to add it. I can click Add, and then I can select Terms and hit OK. If I tried to select credit card again, it'll just tell you that credit card's already been added, so it'll just pop up. Typically it's going to be on the bottom of the quote, but you may need to add a macro to your quote to show this information. It's actually a good question. So if you just started using payment options, there's actually a new macro in QuoteWorks called payment options. It's actually ampersand payment options, and then you can choose where you want it to show up. There is a layout on the leasing integration page in QuoteWorks that has a couple layouts that already have that macro on there.
Would a quote have like only one payment option, or could it list several payments?
It could list several, specifically if you're offering lease options. So if you're giving your customer the option to do lease payments.
I'm thinking if you give them the option to credit card or net 30.
Yeah, then these
How do you
two,
invoke?
just like this. So
How do you
if
click both?
this only matters for quote valet.
Oh.
Yeah, basically what will happen on the layout itself is it would print both, and it would basically tell the customer that they have the option to purchase with a credit card or with terms. The actual selection of it really only matters to quote valet, because then the customer can select if they want credit card or if they want terms. But on a static document, it'll just print both and say, hey, here are your 2 payment options.
On a credit card, could you charge more if they exceeded a certain dollar above?
Not yet, we're working on that. That's actually on development's roadmap, as well as where if the customer chooses credit card, then you can mark it up like 3% for like a convenience fee or something.
Like it's over $2,000, we get 4%.
Right. So yeah, that's something I don't have a time frame on that, but that is on the work. So that's a pretty common request. This is also where you can add the lease payment option. So if anyone's using Great America or any of the leasing providers and you want to add the lease payment option, this is where that's done. You're just going to click on your add lease payment option icon here, or button. And since I'm using Great America, it's going to bring up my defaults, and I'm running a basically a beta version of QuoteWerks, so it's fine. There we go. So you would select your provider, select your rate card, and then you can select your different options. So if you have different points, your term options, your purchase options, and your advanced payment options, and then get lease payments. Oh, maybe I don't have one available. I thought I had one. Okay. Well, I don't have a default payment, default lease card. I thought I had one on here. But basically, it would calculate your lease payment, and then you can display them on the document for the customer. And the customer can make which, in Quote Valley, they can select which payment they want to use. For your purposes, it'll just display, if you're just using QuoteWerks and not Quote Valley, it'll display the different lease payment options, and the customer can select which one. Actually, no, it might be quote's not big enough. So with Great America and a lot of the other providers, you do sometimes have to have a minimum. So in this case, I think it's $10,000, so my quote was too small, so I couldn't offer a lease payment option. But you can see here, once you make your selections, you'll have your different lease payment options available. And then you can choose which ones you want to offer to the customer. So maybe we want to offer the customer just a 12 and the 24-month option. We don't want to offer them any other options. We can add those selected payments. And then the customer has the option of paying by credit card in full, in terms in full, or they could choose a 12-month option, and this would be their rate, or they could choose a 24-month option, and this would be their rate. So this is where you can offer them kind of the different options, and then that new macro that we added to the layout designer, that will display all your different options here as well, so the customer, or so you can show that to the customer.
If you're processing any, or adding any processing fees for credit cards, is there a spot where like, is there a setup for that when you're setting up card payments to say add 3% or whatever?
Not yet. It's a feature we're gonna add, but it's not on there yet.
Okay.
We have a template set up that shows what this looks like when it's static.
Yeah. So this one has my different payment options down here. And then that's the one I have selected. So you can choose to show that if you want to, but you don't have to. So there's basically two macros. One shows which one you have selected, the other one doesn't. So you can choose which one. Okay, so let's go to our Notes tab. So the Notes tab has 4 different notes fields. We have the introduction and closing on the left-hand side, and the purchasing and internal on the right-hand side. The introduction and closing notes are typically notes you would want the customer to see. These can also be default notes that you have. So if you have something that's in like a paragraph form or multiple lines on the document that you want the customer to view, you can set default notes here. These can be changed on a per document basis. So if you have boilerplate information, ordering instructions, anything that kind of changes, and you need to put it on each quote, you can use these fields for that. You can see the set defaults option, so if I click on that, I can put in my default notes, whatever I'd like them to be, and those will show up on the document for my customer. Now by default, we don't show the purchasing and internal notes. So you can use these for anything that you don't want the customer to see. These are strictly for QuoteWerks. Now, if you edited your layout and you do show the purchasing and internal notes, obviously those will print, but by default, if you've never used these before, they're not going to show up on the document for the customer, just the introduction and closing. So it's a good place to put any information that kind of changes on a quote-by-quote basis, or if you just have some basic terms and conditions you want to add to the document, you can use the introduction and closing notes for that information.
Okay,
That
that
you have a
usually,
pull down list.
Yes, if you double click in there, that'll bring up the F2 lookup, and you can create a list of different values.
the set defaults, but if that's global,
It is global. That's a good question. Yeah.
because is there any way to make that customer specific? Like you always have one customer and there's a set of conditions that you always want it to be able to print for that specific group of customers or whatever.
How long would the description be? Just do you know?
Oh, a couple of sentences.
Couple sentences. Okay.
That's included every time when you
What you could do, you wouldn't be able to do that here, but what you can do is using the data link, which we'll get to in the contact manager section. When you pull a contact, you're using Act? Okay, so when you pull your contact from Act, using the data link, you can actually pull additional information from Act into QuoteWerks. So if you use like the user defined field in Act and put that information in there for that customer, anytime you selected that customer, you could have it pull into like a custom field. Probably your custom text 6, because I think it has it's like 600 characters or something like that, which would have enough for a couple sentences of information. And then every time you pulled it, it would pull in here. So you could have it, you could do it that way. You can set it up where it can actually come into the notes fields. The only issue with that is if you have default notes here, it's going to print those also, I think. I don't think it just overwrites it. But now if you're only using one of them, then that would be the option. You could set a default intro for everyone else. And then for this customer, you could also have it pull into the closing. So, but yeah, with the data link, you could do that.
Great. How can we change the text size, bold, underline, so on and so forth in your notes?
That can only be done on the layouts. So on the layout, you actually have to change the field, and there's not a way to. Currently, there's not a way to change like bold a specific word in that note.
So it'd be nice to be able to do that, like a just simple word editor or something.
Yeah, the rich text formatting. Yeah, it's on development map. It's something we hear a lot of. We're making a lot of changes, so that's something I know they're going to be working on.
So it's coming.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's coming. I know it's on there.
They do talk so.
So, it's something that we've had a lot of requests for. So there's a limitation in the control we use currently that doesn't allow for that, but we're upgrading all that stuff. So in that upgrade, whenever that is, I don't know when it is, they'll be able to do that. But you're not. Down at the bottom, you'll see there's created, converted on, last modified, converted reference, and last modified by, and converted by fields. These will kind of give you a quick snapshot on who's made changes to the document. So it'll show you who created the document, which user in QuoteWerks, who was the last user to make a saved change in the document, so that'll be your last modified, and then who the user was that actually made that change. So last modified is the date. Let me clarify that. So last modified is when it was changed. Last modified by was who made that change. If you converted a quote to an order, you'll have your date here. So you can see when it was converted to. You can see the converted reference, so it's like converted to an order invoice, and then you can see who it was converted by. So you can always go to the Notes tab if you want to see who made that last change or when it was converted, something like that. This Notes tab is a great place to find that information as well. All right. The Custom tab. Custom tab has, as you can see, 24 different custom fields that are available. These are fields used for anything that you need in QuoteWerks that you don't see a field for already. So for instance, we don't have an account number field in QuoteWerks, and a lot of companies use account numbers to track their customers or any of that type of information. So if you're using that or any other field that you need, on this custom tab you can actually rename these fields by holding Control on your keyboard and then double clicking on the text name and that will actually let you change that label name. So I can actually call this account, I'll say account number. And that gives me a new field in QuoteWerks that can be used, and we can use that for that account number field in QuoteWerks. And this holds true for any of the fields on the custom, notes, sale info, and sold to, ship to. So if you want to rename or repurpose any of the fields on any of these tabs here, just hold Control and double click on that label name. That's going to make it. Yep, I was just getting there. So you do have to have master rights in order to make that change, and it is a site-wide change. So that's going to make the change for everyone. So make sure if you are changing this that everyone uses the same terminology, and you're not just doing it for yourself unless you're on your own.
And if you've got remote users, all you need to do is share site.ini, and that will.
Yeah, if you do have remote users, if you run a sync or you copy what the database is, the field changes will come with that also. As we talked about earlier, and we'll get into this, the data link, this is also useful if you need to pull additional fields from your CRM or PSA. All the CRMs that I think you guys are using support data link, which we'll get to, so you'll be able to pull those additional fields if you want to. There's a list that you can see when you go to set that up. This is also a good place to put additional information that you need to print on the document. So if you need to add a URL or just something that you need to show up on a quote for a customer, these custom fields are a great place to put that information. So if you're ever looking for a field and you're saying, oh, just this one time I need this to show up on the quote for the customer, you can use a custom field, just add it to the layout, and then you can put that information in there. And the nice thing about these fields is they're only going to print when something's there. So if you add it to a layout for future use, anytime you use that field, it'll print something. If you don't have anything in there, it doesn't print anything on the quote. Alright, so our links tab. So you'll see there's two different sections on the links tab. We have our linked resources, and then we also have what we call the auto links on the right hand side. Again, if you're not in version 5.0, then you're not going to see this. Let me exit out of our messaging program. So the linked resources on the left-hand side is where you can attach additional documentation for your quote or proposal. So if you have a statement of work, Visio or CAD drawing, Excel spreadsheet, PowerPoint presentation, Word document, pictures, anything that you want to attach to this specific document that you're working on in QuoteWerks, you can attach it here. You can either drag and drop the file and we'll link to where it is, or you can click on the Add File Link button and we'll navigate to where the document is saved. Now, we're not going to move the document, so this is important because if you're linking to a document that's on your desktop and you want other users to have access to it, unless they have access to your desktop, they're not going to have access to the file. So we're just linking to where it is saved. It's basically a shortcut is the easiest way to think of that. So if you want to share documents this way with everyone that's using QuoteWerks, you do need to make sure that it's on a network drive or in the QuoteWerks directory wherever every user has access to it. Anything on the linked resources tab can be sent to the customer as well, or it can be for internal use. So if you have an RFP, an RFQ, if you have just a document that you want to include just for this specific quote, then you can do that. If you have something that you don't want to show the customer, that's fine. You're actually going to have the option when we deliver the quote to the customer to choose where we want this document, if we want to include this document with our quote or proposal that we're creating. If you click on the drop down, you'll see you can choose to add a file link, so basically any document, or you can also add a web link. If you add a web link, all we're doing is just putting the URL there and then you can access it from here. We're not obviously able to share that with the customer because it's just a link here, but if you do add a file, then you would be able to access it. The auto links on the right hand side, this is going to give you a quick shortcut to your CRM or PSA QuoteWerks. So if you want to view like the contact in Goldline or Act or in this case ConnectWise or AutoTask, when you pull a contact into QuoteWerks, we'll automatically put the contact link here and you can click on it and it'll actually open up that contact for you in your CRM or PSA. This is just kind of like a nice shortcut and that happens automatically. There's no setup involved. So if you want to use it, it's there. If you don't use it, you don't have to worry about it because there's no setup involved or having to remove it or anything like that. Right here, you're going to see templates on our linked resources. This is extremely useful if you have anything else that you need to attach to this document, or if you have any quotes or proposals that you make changes to. Maybe you need to change them in Word before you send them to the customer. You can do that here on this linked resources tab. This is pulling from a templates folder in QuoteWerks. So if you have maybe a statement of work that you send out with, maybe a quarter of your customers need a new statement of work, you can actually create a template for that statement of work, and then we'll load it and we'll attach it, and then you'll give it a name, so we'll just call it unsaved, that's fine. And then it'll actually prompt you to, if you want to open it, and you'll see it's preset since it's a template. I've already added some macros in there. And then I can go through and I can make changes and I can adjust whatever I need to for this document, and then I can save it, and then when I save it, I have the option to merge it as a Word document. If it's multiple, if it's a Word document and you want to merge it, the macros over, you can also save it as a PDF file. So it gives you a few options to basically take Word documents, turn them into PDFs, and attach them to your quote or proposal in QuoteWerks. If you're interested in setting up the templates, basically what you'll do is you'll just take the document that you're currently using that you want to set up, and where you have QuoteWerks installed, you go to the QuoteWerks directory, and there is a resources folder. And if you double click in that resources folder, there's a templates tab, and that's where I have my templates saved. And in that templates folder is where you can drop these. So you can use either documents or RTFs. If you use an RTF file and use QuoteWerks macros, we merge all that information automatically, so you don't have to worry about doing like a merge Word and then save as PDF. We're going to merge it automatically and then save it as a PDF automatically. If you're using Word, you will, once you add it, so here, let's go ahead and add one here. So if I add a Word document, once I've made all my changes, you'll see if I right click on it, there's an option that says Merge Word Document and then Save New Copy and Merge Word Document. Merge Word Document will basically take your macros from Word and put them in the information from QuoteWerks into that Word document, but leave it as a Word document. Now, the only issue with this is that once you merge it, you can't unmerge it. Microsoft Word doesn't have that functionality. You can't undo a merge. So what we've done is we added another option where you can do a Save New Copy in Merge Word. So maybe you went into your Word document, you made the changes that you needed to for this customer, and then you can right click now and do Save New Copy in Merge Word document. So we'll preserve the changes that you made, and then we'll create a new document, and then we'll merge the data into this document. That way you can check it and make sure everything looks right. And then if it does, then you can right click and choose Save as PDF, and then you can convert that Word document to a PDF file. Once you've done that, then you'd be able to deliver that document as a PDF. If you don't want to save it as a PDF, you want to give the customer a Word document so that they can make changes. You know, if you're working, if you guys are collaborating on something, then you can do that here as well, where you can just leave it as that Word document. So that's how we can handle any type of additional documentation that you need to include, or if you need to be able to change a quote, like the actual layout of the document itself on a per quote basis. You don't have the option, or you're not able to, for some of your quotes, use like a default template that everyone uses. That's how you can do that in QuoteWerks. That's kind of a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions about that?
No, that's more of a, that's an attachment, correct? That's actually, that's an attachment to the quote.
That is correct.
Okay. The quote layout is older in story at this point. You have some marketing.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So when you actually go to your deliver window in QuoteWerks, you'll see there's actually the links tab available, and then anything on the links tab will have a checkbox, and you can choose. This is where you choose what you want to send to the customer. If you're not using the layout designer, if you're saying, no, this is the way I do all my quotes, they're all custom quotes for every customer, you can email directly from here just by right clicking. You'll see there's an option that says email, and you can also attach it to your CRM at this point as well. So if you need to include version in your CRM or PSA. Yeah, you can attach an Excel file. Make sure I covered everything there. so we're gonna go to our document items. So we touched on some of this, but we're gonna work on making changes to your items in the document. So on your document items screen, if you right click, you'll see you have this big edit menu. It's actually the same exact menu as if you click on edit up at the top. When you make that selection, this is where you can add basically line types. You can move items around, you can convert to groups, you can change pricing, you can apply quantities. Basically anything you need to do to a specific item or multiple items, you can accomplish by either highlighting one or multiple items and then right clicking, and then you're going to have all these options. So your first ones are going to be pretty straightforward. Your cut, copy, paste options. Paste special we'll get into later, and then append paste and insert paste. Append paste and insert paste are if you're like copying, maybe you're copying items from one quote over to another quote, you can use the append paste and insert paste. Append paste will put your items at the bottom of your document. Insert paste is going to put your items either where your selection is, so in this case I have my selection here, you can see my little black arrow there, that means that that's where my selection is, or if you highlight it, it's going to put it right there. So anytime you use and you can just know this in QuoteWerks in general, anytime you use insert, it's going to put an item right there, or if you use insert paste, it's going to put your items right where you have that selection. If you use append, it'll always put it at the end of your document no matter where your selection is. So anytime you're looking at QuoteWerks, specifically like the add item assistant, you see a difference between append and insert. That's what we're talking about, is where you're going to put those line items. Select all or Control A will select all the items on the document. So if maybe you need to mark up all the items at once, you're saying, hey, I need to have a, well, we have a pretty large margin here, but I need a 50% margin on all my items. Instead of having to go through and individually select each item or hold shift and select them, you can just do Control A or right click, select all, and it'll select all your items for you, and then you can make any changes to all these items at once. So anything that you want to change on multiple items, you just need to highlight them, and obviously you can see once they're highlighted, it's pretty easy to spot in QuoteWerks.
How do you make a change? That quote would what?
Right here? What do you mean?
How do you just show, demonstrate it?
Okay, so maybe you want to change the quantity on all these items. So I have it all set as 25. Customer comes back and says we only need 15 of all these. So I can right click and then do apply quantity. And since I have all these items highlighted, I can actually set it to 15 and then hit OK. And then it changes it all to 15.
So
Put it to
the
editing too.
The editing features are in the drop down.
Correct.
Probably don't want to forget that would change your shipping as well, that might cause you a bit of a
Yes.
issue.
Yeah, if you have shipping on there, that's probably something you'll want to keep in mind. In our case, it's not really going to matter too much because we might use shipping through here, but if you have shipping as a line item, you'll definitely want to keep that stuff in mind. Your other options, select special. Maybe you need to select multiple items on the document, but maybe you have 150 line items on the document. You're saying, I need to select these 4 line items. I don't want to have to go all the way through the quote to find them. Well, maybe they have the same part number or they're from the same vendor. This is what you can use the select special for. So I can actually choose, okay, which column do I want to base my search on? So maybe I want to do, in our case we'll do item type since I have different item types. So I'll say item type contains, and we'll say product, and then hit OK. And then it's just going to highlight just those items that I've specified. So you can use the select special to basically tell QuoteWerks what specific items you want to highlight, and then you can mark up, change attributes, change quantity, anything like that. This is actually pretty new. This is out actually. So 5.0 does have the ability to keep the items highlighted after you've made your changes. If you're running 4.9 or earlier, it'll actually deselect them after you've made your changes. So if you are using select special or really any kind of selection options, you'll want to make those changes basically as you move forward. You'll just basically make your adjustments, make your selections. And that way it keeps it highlighted. Edit product service properties. This is, if you remember, we clicked on the properties option earlier. This is where you can get to that by right clicking on the menu option. So instead of clicking on the P, you just right click and choose edit product service properties. Since we already talked about that, we'll go ahead and move on. Change the line type. So we have different line types in QuoteWerks. We have a product or service, which is basically your normal line items. And then we also have comments and headings. The difference between comments and headings is typically going to be, a heading would be like a section of your document. So if you're organizing your document into different sections in QuoteWorks, we use what we call heading lines. So if you want to call it, like section 1, room 2, phase 1, phase 2 of a project, maybe if you're saying, hey, these are going to be all your hardware items, these are all your services, these are your optional items, things like that, that's what you can use heading lines for. Comment lines are typically just going to be specific for more information about a specific line item in the document, or just maybe more information about a line item or something in the document. So if you just want text about a specific item or just in the document in general, you can use a comment line for that. And then no change means obviously you're not going to change anything.
Maybe figure out how to get a line that didn't put a $0 value on your comment.
You can use a comment line or a heading line. I can definitely look at that at the next break, because yeah, if you use, that's actually something I should mention. If you add a comment or heading line, there won't be any quantities or pricing associated with it. It should just be text.
It will take a line item number.
Yes, it will take a line item number. There is a way to suppress that on the layout. You can actually add a formula that will suppress that line item count. But yeah, that is true. That's a good point as well. Edit line attributes we talked about as well. Same thing as if you click on the A here, you can also access it by right-clicking and choosing Edit line attributes. So now our different line item types. You'll see we have quite a few different options. Some of them are going to be duplicates. So if you remember, we talked about inserting an append. Same thing for insert and add. Add means the same thing as append. So insert a blank line. If I hit insert a blank line, that'll put in a new blank line here for me. If I choose add, it'll actually add it at the bottom. It added at the top because that's where I had my selector. Inserting a blank line will do just that. It'll insert a blank line with a quantity of 1, blank description, blank price, cost, all that information will be blank, no part number. So you can actually go through and add an item on the fly. You can put anything in there that you need to, so if you need to make an adjustment for something, or maybe it's just a one-off price or a one-off product or service you're adding for the customer, you can add a blank line for that. Right-clicking, you'll see there's an option for insert comment. So again, what we talked about, if you don't want to add any quantity, so there's no quantity associated with it, there's no pricing, it's just a blank line, and all you want is text, you can use a comment line for that. Comment lines are also good for spacing. So if you need to break out your document and you want to give it for the customer, for them to kind of see that there's different sections, there's different spacing, you can also use a comment line for that. That's a good one to use as well. Heading lines. Heading lines are how we organize the different documents sections in QuoteWorks. So let me go ahead and remove my items here. Actually, let me go ahead and remove my lease payment options. Your heading lines, right-clicking, insert heading. This is where you can put in those different sections that we talked about. So if we wanted to say we're going to have a product section, and then maybe we're also going to have a services section, I can add that, and I can just quickly organize my document using these heading lines. And like I said, these heading lines can be whatever you want. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to an office and I'm going to sell them, everything in these 3 offices. Maybe you'll say, okay, this is going to be office 1, this is going to be office 2, and then you can add another one for office 3. So the heading lines are just a really simple and really effective way to break out the document for the customer, but it's also going to be extremely useful for anyone that's using QuoteWorks, because as you start adding items to the document from your product database, QuoteWorks will actually prompt you and say, hey, do you want to put this in a specific heading? So you can actually choose where you want that item to show up in the document.
So is that the main difference between a heading and a comment?
Yes.
Because a comment's nice because it bolds it, heading doesn't.
Yeah, depending on what layout you use, the comment may be bolded, it may be italicized. There's different things you can do with it.
Can you bold a heading?
Yeah, absolutely. You can make it larger. You can have it underlined.
Where do you change the heading?
That would be in your layout designer. I won't go into too much detail on that, except for a simple one. But in your layout designer, you can set up different sections. So you see we have these different detail sections.
Yep.
This detail section 4 is set up for headings. So it's basically, if I go into that filter, it's saying, it's looking for a specific line type. So all our line types in QuoteWerks have numbers.
Okay.
So I just know 256 is the heading line. And this is in the help file.
Okay.
And this basically says, hey, when the document item's line type is equal to 256, run with the heading line, and there is a description, so the description isn't blank, print like this. So it's going to have a bolded description, and it's going to have this little gold underline.
Great.
So if I preview on that one, you can see it has my different headings. And if you want some more information on that, we can talk after.
So if you pre-set up your template to have the headings and you don't have items under one of the under one of the headings, will it still print on your layout or
Yeah.
it will? Okay.
Yeah, so like for instance here, I have a heading line here, it says group 1, and if we go into my layout, it prints group 1.
Okay.
Even though there's no heading there, because it's just saying, QuoteWerks just looks at it and says, print everything on the document. Now I could hide it, maybe I want this heading, but maybe for this specific one, I can go in there and I can say, okay, don't print the line, or you could just delete it. It's up to you. Probably just be easier just to delete it instead of like changing line attributes for a simple heading.
Can you have multiple layouts?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you can have as many layouts as you'd like. There's about 8 or 9 that come with the software by default. There's probably 10 or 12 more on the website, and I'll show you where you can download those. So you can have as many as you like. I have a lot because this is my training installation, but usually you'll have just a few, probably 3 or 4 that you kind of specify. But you can have as many as you like, really. Add product service. This is just a shortcut to bring up to your product lookup window. So when you're ready to add an item to the document, you can click the add. You can right click and choose Add Product Service. It brings up the exact same windows if you click on the Products shortcut here, or if you click on Products Lookup. So if you'd rather just simpler for you to click on Add Product Service, it'll bring up the same exact window. It works exactly the same. Add blank line. This does the exact same thing as insert blank line, except it's just going to add it to the end of the document. So again, anytime you see append or add, that just adds it to the very bottom of the document. Same thing for comment, heading, subtotal. So if you want to subtotal out different sections of your document, you want to show your customer, hey, here's a subtotal portion, you can run subtotal lines by right-clicking on the last item where you want the subtotal to run. So if I want my subtotal to run after this item, I need to right-click on that, because remember, we're choosing Add Subtotal, which means it's going to run after my selector, and then it'll show up here and it'll subtotal out that section for me. And you can even change this description. So if you want to call this, the Office 1 total, you can do that. And then you can run multiple subtotal lines just by adding a second subtotal. And again, you can call this Office 2 subtotal or Office 2 total, whatever you want to call it. And you can see it's going to total up the different sections. Now every time you run a subtotal, it's going to calculate all the line items above it until it gets to either an existing subtotal line or to the top of the document. If you need to run a subtotal maybe just in the middle of the document, you have your different subtotal sections, but maybe halfway down you say, I need to know how much it is up to this point because the customer said this is going to, they need to make 2 payments, so I need to have, at $50,000, I need to stop it here so that I can give them a quote on this portion. You can run what's called a running subtotal, which is right below it. And the running subtotal calculates everything from this subtotal up, and it ignores any existing subtotal lines. So a running subtotal is kind of like a master subtotal line where it just runs everything from itself all the way to the top of the document.
And if you want to bold that, you can create a new section and
Exactly.
Right now, it doesn't stand out.
Yeah. And a lot of the layouts are already set for that. So if you're interested in using like heading line and subtotals and things like that, there's a couple layouts that are already set up to use these different line types. So you can just go in there and change like colors and things like that to make it look like your layout, and then you're good to go.
Is that something that, when we're integrating with auto test, for example, is that a query that we able to pull so I can do, get a notification of amount of an item that's been paid for? Because I might have 50% of my project's gonna get done, and we're gonna get paid for half before we start the next half.
That's not something that QuoteWerks could handle.
But that query, what I'm asking is that a query that I would maybe go to my auto test people and say, you're gonna wanna run this as a back-end connection, like pull this information to try and get that exact amount of how much has been paid?
You could, I don't know of anyone that's ever tried to do that before, so I don't know
Okay.
exactly how it would work.
Alright.
I mean, it's something that you could try. I'm just not sure, to be
No
honest
problem.
with
Yeah, that's fine.
you. Add a summary line. So this is useful if you need to add up multiple items in the document and you want to multiply by a specific percentage. Kind of touched on this, very similar to the unit price formula, where again we use this for our maintenance. So if you want to calculate your maintenance cost, and you say, we charge maintenance on only products, no services. So we could say here, okay, add a new summary line where the extended price, based on the extended price where the item type is equal to product, and then multiply it by 30%. So that's going to be our maintenance charge, and then it'll calculate that amount for you. And then as your pricing changes, it'll actually update. So if I change this, it changes our pricing as we go forward. That's the summary line. Summary line just does the one time. The unit price formula is the one that will calculate automatically or recalculate. And then we also have our add percent discount. The add percent discount will let you run a percent discount line on a specific item. So if you want to give your customer like a 10% discount off this line item, just run the percent discount option right underneath it. And this will calculate it based on the unit price. You can also do it after a subtotal. So if you wanted to give the customer like a 10% discount off the entire total of the document, you can do that as well, or a specific section. So that's the easiest way to run the percent discount, was that if you say, here's your Office 1 subtotal, since you're a good customer, we're going to give you a 10% discount, and maybe we want to call this our, great customer, or whatever you want to call it. You can change any of those description field names, and then it'll show the customer the discount that they're receiving.
Yeah, you can limit who can do that, right?
I'm sorry?
You can limit who can do that.
That's an excellent question. You might be able to hide that option. That's a very good question. I've never tried before. I would assume it would be under a menu option, be under edit. Yeah, you can actually remove that menu option so that they wouldn't be able to run that. And that's the only way to run it, so. Alright. Okay. And then you also have a percent charge. So right now, any of you that are accepting credit cards, this is essentially what we recommend if you need to add a convenience fee to the quote that's running this percent charge line item. And the easiest way to do that is run a subtotal on your document, or running subtotal. Show that one. And then you can choose to hide the subtotal from the customer so they don't see it, and then you can choose add percent charge, and then you can add like a 3% charge, and it'll show up on the document for the customer. So you could call it, credit card fee or whatever you want to call it. And since this is a line item, it does have attributes of subtotal, so we can choose not to print it so that the customer doesn't see the subtotal. So it's something that we just use for us while we're calculating what the fee is going to be, but it won't show up on the document for the customer. So as you're kind of doing this stuff, you'll start to see how you can use those attributes to kind of manipulate the document to look exactly the way you want it for the customer side of things. So you'll always see everything here on this document item screen, but you're going to have full control over what the customer receives from you and what they see from you.
I don't know if this is the right time to ask this question, but you've got complete quote set up, a bunch of items, descriptions here and there. Can you save that entire document as an entity for
Yeah.
reusing?
Yeah, what Doug was asking is, if maybe you created an extremely complicated or even a simple quote, and you want to be able to reuse it over and over again, you have two options for doing that. You can create what's called a template, so that you just load previously selected items. So if I wanted to use this as a template, and this one actually would be a pretty good one to save as a template. The first thing, anytime you want to save a template, make sure you clear out your customer contact information, because a template is going to save exactly the information you have on your document items tab, and then also your sold to contact info. So just make sure that's empty. Same thing with the sale info. You'll want to clear out like any of your default fields here, and just leave them blank. Because when we start a new quote using a template, QuoteWerks will actually populate that information. And then to save it as a template, you simply click as File, Save as Template, and then it prompts you to select a name. So maybe we'll call this our office project, and hit OK. And then when you want to use a template, you simply click File, New, click on the Template tab, and then you just find your template. So there's my template, and then I can hit OK, and that'll open it and let me use it. So if I open that one, that brings up my template, and then I already had this information set, but if I didn't, it would actually populate my date, my expiration field, terms, all that stuff. So it's an easy way to use existing documents. The other option is maybe you just need to re-quote a customer. You sent this quote to a customer, they accepted it, they said, hey, we need a reorder of that exact same quote. So what you can do is you can open up the existing quote, click File, Duplicate, and that'll make an exact copy of your quote, but it'll be a new quote number. So you can hit OK, so it can create a new opportunity in your CRM or PSA, and then you can send that out to the customer instead.
That will not refresh the pricing one, correct?
That is correct. That will not refresh the pricing. However, you can use the best, latest, and compare buttons at the top to refresh pricing. So if you do send out a quote to a customer and it's been, a couple months since last time you quoted them, or you may just want to get in the habit in the future of just using the best, latest, and compare buttons to refresh pricing.
For the quote duplication, can you, is it the easy process to actually duplicate it for another client? Just to duplicate and then change all the client info?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the easiest way to do it?
Yeah, because
Okay.
duplicating takes an exact copy of it, client information and everything, but it creates a brand new quote. So when you do that, all you have to do is go to the sold to, ship to, and then select the customer you want to quote it for.
So just switch it there, and it'll line everything up the way it should?
Exactly.
Okay.
Alright, delete line. As you can see, I've deleted a lot of lines from this document, but if you highlight one or multiple items, you can right-click and delete the item. You can also hit Control-D. You can also hit Delete on your keyboard, and that'll remove it as well. It'll always prompt you when you delete an item, so if I want to delete like these two items, if I hit Delete on my keyboard, it'll say, hey, do you want to delete these items? You can do yes. The nice thing about adding the undo is if you didn't mean to delete that, you can always Control-Z or click on the undo option, and then I'll go ahead and undo that or redo that.
Is that a one step, or can you want to do multiple?
You can go up to 10.
Nice.
I can't tell you how many times I did Control-Z in the bottom.
Yeah. Apply cost modifier. So if you calculate your cost based on the MSRP, this is where you can apply the cost modifier on a per line item basis in QuoteWerks. So if basically your vendor sends you list pricing, and then your cost is 30% off the MSRP, you can go through and you can actually apply the the cost modifier across one or multiple items at once. Again, just highlight the items that you want to make that selection for. Choose apply cost modifier, and then you would put in the discount amount. So maybe it will say, it's 30%. Hit OK, and then that'll fill in our cost modifier, and then fill in our unit cost. So the cost modifier is only used to calculate your cost based off the list. If you calculate your cost any other way, the cost modifier is not going to work. It's just going to look at your unit list field and then discount from the unit list and give you your cost. So that's the only way that the cost modifier is going to work. So if you're not doing it that way, then you will never use the cost modifier field. And we'll get to how you can actually hide fields here in just a moment, but you'll be able to do that. So if you don't use it, you can actually remove it. Apply price modifier. So this is how you can change your price modifier for multiple or all your items at once. If I just go into an item, you can see there's a drop-down list. So you can select from an existing drop-down list of modifiers that exist. these predefined ones are actually under your utilities, price modifier maintenance window. And you can see I have a list of them here. So I can edit, delete any of these that I'm not going to use. So if you use a couple modifiers on a regular basis, you can actually create defaults there. You can also type in. So if I say I want to mark it up 15% from cost, I can type in M15. If I need to do it for multiple items, I can highlight those items, right click, apply price modifier, and then I can set, for this one maybe we don't want to do a 17% margin, and then it'll update those 3 items that I select.
Is there any way to do that to cost? No. Okay.
Fortunately not. Apply quantity, so this is something that I showed earlier. So if you wanted to change quantity across multiple items at one time, or even just one item at a time, you can highlight that one or multiple items, right click and choose apply quantity, and then put in the quantity amount. So saying, customer needs 7 of these now instead of 17. I can just put in 7, and I can hit OK. It can also support some basic math. I think it'll do plus, minus, and then also multiply and divide. So if you need to multiply it by 3 or multiply it by 2 or divide by 2 or something like that, you can put it in here as well. Alright, and then the Zoom description. I know I skipped over convert to group, I'm going to come back to that. The Zoom description is going to be the item description. So each description field in QuoteWerks holds 32,000 characters, which is about 30 pages of text. So if you have very lengthy descriptions for your products and services, won't be an issue in QuoteWerks. You can basically write a book on each line item. If you double click in that description window, this will bring up that zoom window so you can see the entire item's description. So if you want to make a change, or maybe you're copying and pasting a description from another, from Word or from a web page or something like that, you can open up this window and you can paste it here. The nice thing about the Zoom description is not only can you see the entire item's description, but there's also spell check here. So if you want to spell check your description for your items, you can click on that here, and that'll check
to save that change back to the original database item.
No. I don't think so. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's. I know we did talk about the refresh. Yeah, that's only pointing to the database. No, you can't push it to the database. You could copy it, basically copy the item and then paste it into the database, but then you'd have to go and remove the other one itself. Yeah, there's not a way to update it from here into the database. Yes?
You would have to remove it, or can you just refresh it?
What do you mean exactly?
Because I was going to ask the same question. So if you make the description change here and you want to, and obviously you can't update the main product. So could you go in the main product, change your description, and refresh?
Yes, absolutely.
So it'll come down the changes that you made to the description.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what this little icon will do.
Okay.
So if you updated your products, databases, descriptions, or whatever, part numbers, when you click here, this window will pop up and it'll let you update that description or the part numbers or the item, anything that changed. And then the last option I want to show you on the edit menu is going to be the converting to group. So if you sell items together in like a package or a group and you want to be able to group them on the fly in QuoteWerks, you can highlight multiple items at once. They do need to be simultaneous, so basically next to each other, in order to use the group functionality, and there needs to be at least more than one. So you need to have at least 2 highlighted. So if I wanted to highlight these 3 items and sell them as a group, I can highlight them and right click and choose convert to group or hit Control G. And this will prompt me to convert these items to a group. So we're just going to hit OK at first. So anytime you see a group, you can tell it's a group because it's highlighted in yellow. So it's going to be very easy to see that information. When you convert your items to a group, by default, pricing is hidden from the customer. So anytime you see grayed out pricing on your quote, whether it's in a group or not, and you see that it's grayed out, that means that pricing is hidden from the customer. What the customer will actually see is the individual line items and then this total price. So the customer can actually see all the items that are in this group. They're only going to see this individual price here. If you want to remove items from a group, just delete the header line and the items will go back to the way they were. So if we highlight these, and I'm just going to hit G. Okay, and then it groups them together. So it's very easy to go through and make those changes. Now maybe you don't want to show the customer the individual line items, you just want to show them, hey, you're buying this, you know, AAA special package that we created for you and here's the price. You can go through the individual line item attributes. So right click, edit line attributes, or hit the A on your grid toolbar. And then we can go into the print line and change that to no, and then it won't show up on the document. So all that's going to show up if we view this one is just that one line item with that price.
Probably don't want to tell your great customer you have a 0% discount.
Right, yeah, you'd probably delete that one too. And then again, if you wanted to remove the item from the group, just delete that header line, the items go back to the way they were. However, just for the unit pricing, because we printed or we changed the print line attribute after the fact, we need to go back and change it to print line so that they do show up on the quote. The other option you have when you convert to a group is if you're selling hardware as a service. You're going to give the customer basically to purchase the hardware as a monthly option. We can group them together, and then you'll see here it'll let you choose convert the amount to recurring. It's going to be set as monthly. Again, remember that checkbox for any time you have recurring items on QuoteWerks, you want to include that first payment in the document total, otherwise they get your first payment free. How do you want to set your dates? You want to set it for today, and then we'll say a year, and then set your term. And this one will convert it to orange, so that's how you know it's going to be a recurring group, and then it'll give you that unit price per month. Okay. Any questions on this document item screen? I know that's a lot of information.
If I was trying to, if I was concerned, if I had a large group of people that are actually using this, and I was concerned about unit pricing and unit list and price modifiers, am I able to restrict those functions from being changed?
Yes. In the utilities user maintenance window that we talked about, and I'll show you specifically.
So you're still going there eventually? Okay.
Yeah.
I can wait till then.
Yeah, there's basically security settings for each of these fields where you can specify that this specific user does not have access to manually change this field.
Okay.
The other option you have is, and I meant to mention this and I actually forgot, so that's a good segue, is you can customize the columns on this document item screen. So if you want to hide columns from your users, you can do that also, or, you know, and that's not even saying it's because you don't trust them, but maybe you just don't use these columns, because I think we have 136 columns on the document item screen. You're probably using 5 to 10 of them usually. So you can actually go through and choose which columns you're hiding. This is also where you can rename them and reorganize them, so you can actually move them around on this document item screen using that view customized columns. You can see here, you can move them up, move them down, hide, rename. You can drag them, so if you just hold down the click, you can drag them there and choose which ones you want to show up. And if it has a check mark next to it, that means that it prints or it shows up on the document item screen. If it's unchecked, that means it does not show up.
Under the price modifier, you have quite a list of different ways of modifying the price there.
Yeah.
That can be tailored also?
Yep, that's under utilities and price modifier maintenance.
Thank you.
Is there an option for when, under that refresh option for custom field refreshing as well?
Yes. Yeah, any of the columns are available. Dragging and dropping. So if you have items on your document that you need to move around, we did talk about copying and pasting. You can also drag and drop items. So the way to drag and drop is, so under Office 2, maybe I want to move this item up to Office 1. All you need to do is select it, left click, and then drag. And then you can choose where you exactly want it to show up, or where you want to move it to in the document. Pretty simple, but very handy if you're adding a bunch of items at once and then you just need to reorganize it. That's a really easy way to do it. So, talked about one of these. Converting groups. Okay, so now we're gonna get into kind of making changes in QuoteWorks itself, kind of customizing the documents. Some of the stuff we already kind of touched on, so I may be repeating it, but we already talked about customizing the columns on the on like your custom notes, sale info, sold to, ship to. So if you hold control, double click on a field name, you can rename that. So like here, if I want to call this my customer instead of my sold to field, I can make that change very quickly and easily. And again, that's going to be a site change. So the document items, like we just showed, that's done in a different spot. So if you want to change these columns, we have to go to that View, Customize Columns window, and that's where you'll make this change. One thing I forgot to mention, if you make a change here and you want to apply it to a specific user or to multiple users, click on the Apply To tab, and then you can select which users you'd like to apply it to. If it's only to a specific user, you can choose that you only want to apply it to these users. If you want to apply it to all users, you can do that. Or if you do it to apply to a current user, that's you, because that's who you're logged in as. You can make that change. So just on that Apply To tab, that's how you can choose which users get those different settings.
So if you're a master user, you reduce your own visibility of certain things that you don't use. Is there a way to just show everything, show all, if you ever want to just see things you forgot when you changed them last year?
Yeah, you can. You can click on Restore Defaults.
Oh,
And
back in.
yeah, so I was like, so do that carefully. What you might want to do is just create another user in QuoteWorks. Maybe call it like default user or something, another username, and then you can have just leave them all the default settings, and that might be an option for you, so you can at least go back and see what the defaults originally were. Because it doesn't
you can
take
apply those back to yourself.
right. Because it doesn't. When you create new users in QuoteWorks, it doesn't use a license key unless you log in. So you can create as many user logins as you want in QuoteWorks, but you're only using a license key when someone actually logs into the software. Customizing menus. I don't know how much of this we're going to get into because this can be pretty complicated. But QuoteWorks has the ability to customize the different menu options here. So you can basically add another menu. This is useful if you need to open a document, run an app from QuoteWorks or something like that. You can create a new menu option for that. So under your Tools menu, you're going to click on Customize Menus. And you'll choose which menu option you want to add this new customization to. So maybe we want to do it under a Tool menu. And then the first one you're going to do is you're going to click on Define. So Define just means we're going to create the new menu option. So we'll click New, then we'll click New, and then it's going to give you the option of basically what do you want the menu to say. So we can put whatever we like, and then you can choose whether it's going to run an external application, open a web URL, or open a document. So this is extremely useful if you have, maybe there's a specific document you're supposed to reference before you quote a customer. Maybe there's a website you need to go to check pricing or to look something up. Every time you quote out this customer, you can create this menu option here, and then instead of having to open up the program or open up that specific document, you simply select that menu option instead, and it'll launch it for you. So if we wanted to open up a URL, you'd say, okay, what's the command? It's going to be the URL or the file in that case, and then you want it to open up in a normal window or maximize, and then who's the owner, and then who do you want to publish it to. Definitely my menu, and then I can also publish it to others. You can also choose which user has access to it here, so you'll see the access rights to it. This is something we'll go on if you're interested in more detail offline, probably like on breaks or at the end of the training today, because it can get kind of complex, but this is what that'll allow you to do. So if you guys do have questions about that, just let me know, and we can go into more detail later. Like I said, it take quite a bit to kind of explain and understand. Alright. Personalized preferences. This goes back into kind of your settings. So we went over Tools Options. Now there's also Tools My Preferences. Tools My Preferences is going to be specific to your user in QuoteWorks. So anything that you set on My Preferences is a user-based setting, not a site setting. So this would be where you're going to set specifically your name, your title, address, city, state, email address, and then you have options that you can set that are specific to your user as well. So the first tab is going to be the personal tab. This will have obviously your full name. You can put your title, your address, your city, state. By default, this is usually what's used on your quote layouts for the customer as your contact information. So each time you create a new user in QuoteWerks, you're going to want to make sure their personal information is filled out correctly. Email setup is going to be here as well. If you're using Outlook for email, you can just select Outlook as your email client, and we'll use Outlook to send out the email. If you're not using Outlook, just choose the QuoteWerks built-in email, and then you can put in your credentials. If you're using Google or Gmail, you can actually just pull in the default Gmail settings. That'll usually work for, I think, like 99% of people, but if you have specific Gmail settings that are different than this, then you'll just have to put them in manually. This is also going to be the default document attachment. So when we create a quote in QuoteWerks, we automatically convert it to a PDF and email it to the customer. You can change the setting here if you, for some reason, wanted to send them an RTF version of the document instead. You do have that option, but for the most part, we'll probably just leave that as PDF.
Will you be updating the PDF version at all? It's still a pretty old one, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, in the next build, which should be out in about probably 2 to 3 weeks, we just updated the printing for the PDF. So I don't know exactly what all the changes are, but I know they just retooled all that. So that should be updated to the latest and greatest. Your defaults, if you want to set a default CC or BCC on for your emails, this is where you can set that. So if you need to copy someone or you need to blind copy someone on that, you can set that here. And then this is going to be your default subject for any email that you send out to your customers in QuoteWerks. So by default, we're going to use the document name and the document number. So if you need to adjust that, you can change that here. Down here is going to be your signatures. So you actually have quite a few different signature options. We have a standard, short, alternate 1, alternate 2, and alternate 3. So if you are selling from multiple companies and you need to have multiple signatures, you can actually set up the different signatures here, and then you can choose different templates in different email templates in QuoteWerks that use a different signature. If you want to create one that says like Happy Holidays, during the holidays, you can do that. So you have a couple different options for setting up your different signatures. If you just want to use the one, that's fine also, then just set it as standard. Standard signature is the one that's on all the email templates by default. But you can change that if you email, or if you change the email templates, you can choose which signature you want to use. Yes?
Is that a token also to put it into a document?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a macro for all the different signature types.
Okay, great.
And then if you click on the option here, this edit button, you'll see this is the default signature, and you can see it just has macros for this specific signature. So it's saying it's the logged in user full name or their username, the logged in user title, company, full address, all that information. So I think this is the default that comes with QuoteWerks. So if you've never made this change, you can do that here. If you're sending your emails through Outlook and you're reviewing them in Outlook before sending, it's actually a checkbox here that says review emails in Outlook before sending. I think it'll actually default to your Outlook signature, I believe. And then miscellaneous, you won't ever need to touch this or make changes to this, so you can disregard this tab. But if you ever wonder what it is, even I don't know, so you can ask tech support. You can see it floating around today. Views, if you want to customize your different document items columns, you can do it here. So if you're, if you don't have master rights, a lot of times the master rights user, the admin user, will take away some of the different menu options because you don't want people messing with different settings here. So if you go to the document items, this is where you can get to that if it was removed from you. If you wanted to be able to make those changes. It's also just easier if you're setting up users when you're setting them up to be able to come here and go views, document items, and make that change. Same thing for customizing menus. If you want to make your menu customizations, you can do that here. Your default Workbook tab. So when you start QuoteWerks, if you notice, 99% of you probably have the document items tab set as your default. That's where you can change the setting. If you always want to start on the sold to ship to tab instead, you can do that. If you always want to start on the sale info tab, maybe the most important thing is setting the dates and setting the tax rate before you even begin the document. You can have QuoteWerks default to the sale info tab if you'd like. So you can actually choose which tab you want QuoteWorks to default to. If you're not even going to use the document items tab, if you're going to use the links tab that you want to default to, you can do that. So that's where you can make that change. The default edit contact tab, you can change this to account, field, or notes. I don't know that you would ever need to change this, so I'll probably just leave it as an account. Appearance. If you don't like the way QuoteWorks looks, you can change the different skins here. There's a few different options on the drop down, and you can actually preview it before you make that change. You can also change the background here from a light background to a dark background. And again, these are user settings, so this isn't going to change it for everyone. This will just be specific to this user. Spelling, if you have any words in uppercase, if that's how you kind of use things to ignore so that it doesn't show up in your spell check, you can have this checked here. These are all checked by default, so you shouldn't have to really make too many changes with these, but you can adjust it if you like. And then the Miscellaneous tab. So the Miscellaneous tab has probably the most commonly used options for each user, and some that you'll actually want to change. This one right here, this auto close print window after previewing or printing. This is useful if you're working on your layouts and you're making changes and you keep opening it, previewing it. You can uncheck this, and this will actually keep the print window open for you. That way, as you're making changes and you're modifying, it doesn't close, you don't have to click deliver each time. So that's why I have mine unchecked. You can also set it to close. That way, once you click on deliver and you either preview or email, it then closes the window. So that's how you can change that option. If you have literature folders or if you have literature files in multiple folders, you can also have them auto-expanded. Auto-expand the product database folder. So if you have folders set up in your products and you want them to automatically show up when you click on a product database, then you'll need to have this checkbox set. Auto-display the active quotes panel. If you want this active quotes panel to pop open automatically every time you pull in a contact, you'll need that checked. If you leave this unchecked, you can still access the active quotes panel by clicking on the grid toolbar option. It just won't pop open when you pull a contact, even if the quote exists for them already. For those of you using real-time and Utilize, if you want to automatically retrieve real-time pricing and availability for Utilize when you're searching for an item, you need to check this box here. And this will remember your setting, because you can actually set it when you're looking for an item, but if you automatically want it to look up and find that item for you without having to check the box, then you'll want that checked. Confirm before exiting QuoteWorks. This is nice if you've ever accidentally, maybe you tried to minimize QuoteWorks and you accidentally closed it instead and you didn't save your quote and you lost everything. This is a nice just kind of safety valve to have, that if you check this box and you click on close, QuoteWorks will actually say, hey, are you sure you want to close before we exit? Display large configuration link creation handle. Don't need to worry about that. That's very good. Enable add item assistant. So some of you may see in QuoteWorks when you add an item on the document, a box pops up and it'll actually have like a preview of the item's picture if there's one available. It'll ask you if you want to select the quantity, change the pricing, things like that. That's what the add item assistant is. So if you want to include that, you can. The compare item assistant is going to let you, it's going to do a very similar thing to the add item, but it'll let you compare if you've set up items in the compare window. We'll get into that if that's something that you guys are using. Most people don't use it, so you probably won't need to. But you can basically compare items against each other that you've already reset in QuoteWorks. Enable double click to bring up the F2 lookup on the document items grid. So if you double click on a specific field in QuoteWorks, as we talked about earlier in some of those other fields, you'll see that F2 lookup pick list window opens. So just double clicking will let you have it in the document items window by default also. If you are using QuoteValet and you want the QuoteValet dashboard to launch as soon as you log into QuoteWorks, so you can kind of see what's going on in like your inbox and things of that nature, you can check that box, and then that way when you log into QuoteWorks, it'll automatically open up that QuoteValet dashboard for you, kind of what's going on in QuoteValet. Print all spec sheets by default. This means that if you've set up spec sheets for your items in your product database, when you go to deliver the document to the customer, those spec sheet documents will automatically be checked. Now you can uncheck them if you want, but this just means that they'll automatically be checked so you don't have to make that change each time. Start with blank document. If you're using templates a lot, this is a useful one to uncheck, where it'll actually start you not with a blank document, it'll let you basically click new or open and you can select which one. So instead of having a blank open document each time, you can start with a template or you can open an existing template. So if you want to change that, you can. Again, useful if you're using a lot of templates, if you start with templates a lot. Skip that one. This is a good one too. Warn if document is unsaved when printing or emailing. So before you send out the document to the customer, you're usually going to want to save it because if you don't save it, we don't apply the document number, we don't create the opportunity in your CRM or PSA. It's not linked with anything, so you're usually going to want to send it before or save it before you send it to the customer. This will pop up a message that says, hey, this is unsafe when you're printing or emailing it. So this is one that I would recommend that you guys check. And a lot of these things that we do on our preferences here, the best thing to do is create a user that's going to have these preferences, set all these preferences, and then you can just clone that user over and over again for everyone else in your organization. And then you can go through and make modifications on a per user basis. When choosing optional items, default to keeping them optional. So if you have an optional item set as optional in QuoteWerks, this will let you keep that default. That is a terrible explanation, so let me try better. So when you choose an optional item, actually let me see replaying it, this is probably better in here. Alright, so when this item is flagged as optional, this will actually keep the item set as optional in like the layout instead of it just showing up as a regular item. So it's basically saying like it's optional selected or something like that. So it's still basically flagged as optional. If you're interested in exactly what that means, I would say go to the help talk because I'm not doing a very good job explaining that. But it's not a very common setting. When duplicating the document, do not change sales rep to logged in user. So if you are, maybe you're copying another user's documents and you want to leave that sales rep set as the sales rep for the document, when you duplicate it, you'll want this checked. It's basically saying, if you do the file duplicate that we talked about and you want to keep the sales rep the same, then you'll want this checked. If you leave it unchecked, then it's going to switch it to you, because anytime you create a new document in QuoteWerks, whether you're duplicating it, whether you're using a template, it's going to default to you as the sales rep who you're logged in as. Don't remember window location. So anyone that has multiple monitors, and if you ever log in remotely, this happens to me all the time, if you check this box, QuoteWerks will default to your primary monitor, which is usually the one you're remoted into. However, if you uncheck this and you had moved QuoteWerks or another one of the screens to a different monitor location, if you don't have this checked, then QuoteWerks will actually remember where it was saved, and you may not have access to that one. So this is good if you have multiple monitors or anything like that to use that setting. You can choose don't remember window location, and then it'll have it set there. Document search default, we haven't gotten there yet, but we did change our search window, so you can actually choose what you want your document search default to look like. It's not going to make much sense until we get in there, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. And then for your PDF files, if you want to merge your PDF files into a single PDF document, you'll want this checkbox set here. This is set by default, so you don't have to change this, but if you do want, if you want to send the customer 3 or 4 different PDF files, you'll need to leave this unchecked. So when we see PDF files in the document, we actually merge them into one document.
Does that help with spam filters or anything like that? I'm just curious.
It can. It's really for the customer, to be honest. Instead of the customer getting 5 documents and trying to figure out which order, they just get the one document with everything in order. So it's kind of just preference, really. Embedding the fonts in the PDF file. If you want to embed the fonts in the PDF file, you can do that here. If you want to color and underline the hyperlink URLs in your PDF file, check that. And then if you want to make the PDF read-only, if you're worried about the customer like copying and pasting information from the PDF, maybe to try to price shop you or Google or something, you can make it read-only so the customer can't copy the content from there. And then for any of you that are using ConnectWise, Autotask, Salesforce, Sugar, I don't think any of you guys are using those. You'll need to put in your CRM credentials under the Contact Manager tab. So for I think everyone here, it's just going to be Autotask and ConnectWise. Possibly MS-CRM if you're using the CRM Live, where you have to have your login credentials. You might need that, but definitely for Autotask and ConnectWise, you'll need to put in either your ConnectWise or Autotask credentials in here. If you're using Active Directory for CRM, you won't need this. If you're using the, like I said, if you're using the CRM Live, I think you do have to put in your
How much
credentials.
latest version of that tab doesn't exist?
What's your CRM?
Goldline.
Okay, yeah, you don't need it for Goldline.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's probably a good stopping point. So why don't we go ahead and take a break, so you guys can use the restroom and get coffee.
That's it.